Good morning, this is Ms. Trangle. We're on lesson 8-7, perpendicular lines. Our essential question, what are perpendicular lines? Our learning target, we're on 8E. This is our last section of Unit 8, by the way. I can identify perpendicular lines and can write equations for perpendicular lines. So this will be pretty similar to 8-6, but perpendicular instead of parallel lines. So what is a perpendicular line? They are lines that form four 90-degree right angles. They are lines where the slopes, that's the black part, the slopes are negative reciprocals. So what does that mean? I'll kind of circle it in green. A negative reciprocal is basically a fraction that you flip. So I started with 2/3. I flipped the 3 and the 2, and then you change the sign. So if I have a positive 2/3, the negative reciprocal is -3/2. Here's another example. I'll circle in yellow. If I have -5/1, then the negative or opposite reciprocal is +1/5. So you're changing the order of your fraction and you're changing the positive and negative signs. The last thing that's part of our definition for perpendicular lines is the slopes multiply to -1. And I put a little example of that right up here. Oops. So if I multiply -2/3 times, oops, there's a little mistake in this, -2/3 times 3/2, that one should be positive. To multiply a fraction, you are multiplying across. So right here, -2 times +3 is -6. The denominator or bottom of my fraction, +3 times +2 is 6. And then if I divide those, I get -1. So I will always get -1 when I multiply the slopes of perpendicular lines. And then the last thing is basically perpendicular lines. People often think of it like a T or a plus or a cross. They look like this. Here's a picture. And they are 90-degree right angles. So if you need to, pause the notes, get any definitions down. All right, and here's a few check for understanding questions. Question 1. Perpendicular lines. What is true about the picture or a diagram of perpendicular lines? So you should have said they make four 90-degree right angles. All right, second check for understanding question. We will do that on the next slide. Okay, so my first example, what we are going to do, the question is, I will write it in here, find the slope of a line perpendicular to each of these. So similar to 8-6, but instead of parallel, we're going to be doing perpendicular. So if I look at 1A, first I want to find my slope. This is in slope-intercept, y equals mx plus b. My slope is 5. Now, I need it to be a fraction, and this is part of why I had everyone using fractions and not decimals. So to make this a fraction, I put a 1 on the denominator. So 5/1. To find the slope of something perpendicular, I flip it, 1/5, and I change the sign. This was a +5 up here, +5. So my new slope, my perpendicular slope, is -1/5. And that's it. Let's try part B. -2/5 is my slope. So what is going to be the slope of something perpendicular? So what is the negative or opposite reciprocal? So put in your check for understanding question, see if you get it right. It should be +5/2. +5/2. You flip your fraction, you change your sign. It was negative, you make it positive. Part C, now we are in point slope form. So 2 is my slope. Just like part A, I make it a fraction. I put a 1 underneath 2/1. My new slope, my perpendicular slope, I flip my fraction, 2/1. I make it 1/2, and this needs to be negative. All right, for part D, you need to make sure this is standard form, ax plus by equals c. 2 is not your slope. You have to, anytime you see standard form, you have to convert it. So I start by subtracting 2x. I'm not adding, I'm subtracting. This negative goes with the 3. I get negative 3y equals negative 2x plus 6. Remember, don't make it a 4x. Don't combine them. They're not like terms. Second step, divide everything by negative 3. My slope right here, a negative 2 divided by a negative 3, my slope becomes a positive 2/3. I don't even need to do the rest of the question because it doesn't matter. So the point of doing all that work is now that I know my slope is 2/3, I find the negative reciprocal. So here's another check for understanding question in example 1D. What would the slope of a line be that is perpendicular? You should have said negative 3/2. You take 2/3, you flip it, you find the reciprocal, you change the sign. And this is again why I have people use fractions 2/3 instead of 0.6. For the graph, for part E, you are doing something pretty similar. You do need to find the slope by picking any 2 points, any 2 nice points, so any of these purple points would work. Remember, from a graph, I'm counting rise over run. Rise over run. My rise is negative 1. I'm going down 1. My run is 2. Negative 1/2. Remember, if I want the slope perpendicular, I flip that and I make it positive. You could say 2 over 1, or a lot of times we just write that as 2. All right, number 2, write an equation for a line perpendicular to y equals 2x minus 4 that goes through the point negative 4, 2 in slope-intercept form. So first, my slope is 2. I want something perpendicular, so I'm not using 2 like for a parallel line. I make a fraction, 2 over 1. I need to take that slope, 2 over 1, find the negative or opposite reciprocal. Flip your fraction. This one was positive. My new slope is negative. That is my m. This is my m. I'm not done. That's my m. So I have y equals mx plus b. Negative 1/2 is my m. This point right here, negative 4, 2, goes in for your x and y. So 2 goes in for y. Negative 4 goes in for x. I multiply. Negative 1/2 times negative 4, and a negative is a positive 2. Everything else stays. 2 equals plus b. To solve for b, I have a one-step equation. I subtract 2, my b is 0. So you can write your answer as y equals negative 1/2 x plus 0 minus 0, or often we put the 0 off. Okay, example 3. Write an equation for a line perpendicular. Okay, so first, and maybe we'll do some questions for this one to make sure people are understanding. So your slope right now is 4/3. So another check for understanding question. What slope should you be using as your m for something perpendicular? So not 4/3. 4/3 is not the right answer. What should you be using? Okay, the right answer is negative 3/4. Make sure it's negative. That's your m that you want to use. So slope-intercept, I want y equals mx plus b. Then I take my point, maybe I'll do purple, negative 8 is my x, 7 is my y. Some people are putting those in backwards, so 7 goes in for y. Negative 3/4 was my m. Negative 8 was my x plus b. So make sure you're doing the right order. Then you are multiplying right here, negative 3/4 times negative 8. Another problem I'm seeing on a lot of quizzes, negative times a negative. So negative 3/4 times negative 8 is positive 6. You subtract 6 to solve for b. 1 is your b. So here's another check for understanding. What is your full answer? So you should be saying y equals negative 3/4 x plus 1. All right, number 4, write an equation for a line perpendicular to 8x plus 2y equals 20 that passes through 16,3 in point slope form. So a lot of things going on here. First, 8x plus 2y equals 20 is in standard form. You have to. Anytime you have standard form, you have to convert it to slope-intercept. You have to do your 2 steps. Minus 8x, minus 8x. Those become a 0. I cross them out. I still have 2y. Please do not put 12. It's negative 8x, just what you see. Negative 8x plus 20. Next, divide each term 3 places by the coefficient of y by 2. So my slope is negative 4, negative 4. So again, we are not using negative 4. We want the slope that is perpendicular, perpendicular. So what slope should you be using? The correct answer is positive 1/4. Positive 1/4. I added a 1 under my slope, negative 4 over 1. I found the negative reciprocal. Now I am using point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So 1/4 is my m, positive 1/4. Then here is my x1 and my y1. Please remember, for point slope form, the signs change. So my y1 looks like a positive 3. In my answer, it will show up as negative 3. My x1 is a positive 16. In my equation, it will show up as negative 16. So this is my final answer. Y minus 3 equals 1/4 x minus 16. All right, number 5, write an equation perpendicular to y equals 1/3 x minus 4 that passes through the point 8, negative 2 in point slope form. So first, I always ask myself, what is the m? The m is 1/3. What m should we be using? So input your answer. What m should you be using? The answer is negative 3 or negative 3 over 1. Those are the same thing, negative 3 or negative 3 over 1. Then you are putting in your point, positive 8 and negative 2. Remember, positive 8 shows up as a negative 8. Negative 2 shows up as a positive 2. So this is my answer. Y plus 2 equals negative 3 times x minus 8. All right, last but not least is our summary. Perpendicular lines form blank angles. You should have put in for your answer right or 90 degrees. Their slopes are negative blank, whose product is blank. The correct answer, their slopes are negative reciprocals, whose product is negative 1. For example, if the slope is 4/5, the slope perpendicular would be what? So input your answer. You should have said negative 5 over 4. That's it. Thank you for watching.